Some of his own children told Donald Trump, "Dad, don't do it, don't run." And only 2 of them turned out today, and they weren't Ivanka and they weren't Donald Trump Jr., to see Trump go ahead anyway.
In order to make America great and glorious again, I am tonight announcing my candidacy for President of the United States.
Now, Trump is running again, even though he lost his last election against Joe Biden, even though he's blamed for the Republicans failing to win back control of the United States Senate in last week's midterm elections. Many of his key picks actually bombed these candidates who were duds. Now, I know that the media is actually exaggerating the Republican failure. On the votes counted so far, there's been a 7-point swing against the Democrats. 7 points. It just didn't translate into enough seats. But there's no doubt that Trump was embarrassed by the result, as he should be. And Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, not Trump, is now the big new Republican hope after winning his re-election by a massive 20-point margin. And DeSantis would have noticed something was off about Trump's rambling announcement today.
Together, we will be taking on the most corrupt forces and entrenched interests imaginable. Our country is in a horrible state. We're in grave trouble. This is not a task for a politician or a conventional candidate. This is a task for a great movement that embodies the courage, confidence, and the spirit of the American people.
I was joined earlier by Sky News US correspondent Annelise Nielsen, who was at the Trump mansion in Florida today. Annelise Nielsen, totally no surprise. Donald Trump says he's going to be running for president in 2 years' time. What struck me about this speech, it lasted for more than an hour, was how flat it was. Did it sound that way actually in the room?
Yeah, look, Andrew, I've been to a lot of these rallies over the last 2 years. Most recently, we went to the one in Pennsylvania, the last one where he was endorsing Dr. Oz for the Senate, who, of course, didn't end up succeeding. There he went for over 2.5 hours, and you could just see he was in his element. He was hitting all those normal notes that we hear from him, and this was surprisingly flat. We heard when he came in the room, there was the big fanfare. They announced him as the next president of the United States. And then it very much felt like he was just reading off the autocue. And the audience here, these are all his most fervent supporters. We didn't hear any huge amounts of enthusiasm from them. Even at the moment where they announced that he was running for 2024, it almost came as a bit of a surprise because there wasn't that upswell in the room. And I don't quite know what to pin that to. Perhaps he's had advice from advisors about what he needs to be hitting to make sure that he doesn't isolate people, that he's not cast as the extreme candidate again. But it's not quite what we've known from Donald Trump. And if he wants to enliven his base, he's going to have to speak to them like he normally does, because we know from the results from the midterms, he's certainly done enough to isolate more moderate voters. So, yeah, I don't disagree with that assessment at all. From the room, it certainly felt like that.
Annelise, one of the reasons I think it felt a bit flat was that it was a casual ramble through hits and memories of when he was a president and what he said to the Chancellor of Germany, Angela Merkel, at one stage, and blah, blah. There wasn't any big rah-rah, and there was an admission in there that, well, the midterm elections had not gone that well, that's true, but don't worry, Americans are going to get angry, going to be angry enough to vote for me in 2 years' time. Here's a grab.
Much criticism is being placed on the fact that the Republican Party should have done better, and frankly, much of this blame is correct. But the citizens of our country have not yet realized the full extent and gravity of the pain our nation is going through, and the total effect of the suffering is just starting to take hold. They don't quite feel it yet, but they will very soon. I have no doubt that by 2024, it will sadly be much worse, and they will see much more clearly what happened and what is happening to our country, and the voting will be much different. 2024. Are you getting ready? And I am too. I am too.
Annelise Nielsen, Donald Trump is clearly trying to be the anger candidate, but I think the anger has drained out of the American electorate. They're a bit tired of it.
I wouldn't say that necessarily Americans won't be angry in 2 years. The economy is bad, inflation is bad, there's further risks of conflict overseas, that's all alarming, and energy security is a real problem, and he hit on that note well, and I think that is going to be a consistent theme among Republicans in the lead up to 2024. The question is not what they're mad about, it's who's the person to fix it. And I don't think he's made that case. I don't think that he has what is needed to be the person to answer that call just yet, because there is so much baggage. And what he is reflective of is a very tumultuous time in American history. A lot of people are tired of that. They want to go back to more peace and prosperity, and they want to go back to more calm government. And that is a lot of what Joe Biden offers. And so when you're faced with the prospect of midterms like the American voters were, it was the Republicans who didn't turn out. It was the Democrats who wanted to keep the status quo, keep things calm, that did. And so I think he's probably got some good advisors in there that have read the room right, but I don't think he's necessarily made the case for the strategy to achieve it.
Yeah, I think people over drama. Just finally, it seemed to me that he's been advised to take the crazy out of his pitch. Did you hear that in this speech?
Absolutely. Yeah, that was pretty much my assessment of it as well. He didn't talk about some of his most inflammatory stuff. For instance, I've listened to him for years talk about abortion, that he is the pro-life president. That won him a lot of support among Catholics, among conservatives across the country. That didn't come up once. I've heard him talk about full-term abortions and how they happen in America, and he's the guy to stop them. Just because Roe v. Wade's been overturned, this doesn't mean it's not a discussion in America. This is still going to a state level. There's still pushes to codify it in DC. He didn't mention it. And then the other aspect to this is he didn't talk about the election being stolen. We all know that he hasn't changed his mind on that. And he is going to make that an issue, but he's not doing it now because he knows that people are a bit fed up with it. One of the flattest things he said was, this election's not about me, it's about you, the American people, and I think that was probably the most disingenuous part of it, because this is very much about the scores he wants to settle, he wants to be vindicated, and I think that's going to be a huge theme to the next 2 years of the campaign. He's going to get into it with Ron DeSantis. They're going to be compared a lot, and I think there is a lot of space for a moderate Republican candidate to come in and take the rest of the oxygen in the room, because that's exactly what Donald Trump did in 2016. When everyone was fighting it out, he came in and ran his own race, and so the script might just get flipped on him.
Annelise Nielsen, thank you so much for your time.